Hello students. Today we are going to discuss Russia under Yeltsin. How Yeltsin played a very important role or how the policies of Yeltsin proved very crucial for the process of disintegration of the Soviet Union. Today we are going to see how the role of Yeltsin in Soviet Union played a very important role in bringing down the Soviet Union. The Boris Yeltsin from 1931 to 2007 served as a president for the Russian Federation, the very first elected leader, the very first elected president from 1991 till 1999. Though a Communist Party leader for much of his life, he eventually came to believe that both democratic and free market economy in Russia would work. However, it was a very unsuccessful experiment in Russia for the decades of the 1990s that the administrative matters couldn't handle well by Boris Yeltsin because it was not suitable for the country which has been ruled for a long distance for nearly 7 decades, and suddenly accepting such liberal liberal economic model or the liberal democratic model, it was not uh, well implemented initially from the Gorbachev's period and later by the Boris Yeltsin's for the 1990s decade, and that created lots of chaos. However, the Boris Yeltsin played a very important and instrumental role in both the collapse of the Soviet Union. Yeltsin won two presidential elections, the first of which occurred while Russia was still a Soviet republic. But despite successfully ushering in a freer and more open society, his tenure was marred by economic hardships, increased corruptions and crime, and a violent war in breakaway Republic of Chechnya and Russia's diminished influence over the world events. If we see the Russia in the decade of 90s, we see that Russia is itself facing lots of problems for not only the international affairs but also at its domestic affairs, where it has to deal with the so many issues of be it political crisis or be it economic crisis. So let's understand how the Boris Yeltsin's play how has been the life of the Boris Yeltsin's during his early years. Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin was born on the 1st February 1931 in Butka, a small Russian village in Ural Mountains. His peasant grandfathers had been forcibly uprooted by the Soviet dictatorship of Joseph Stalin's collectivization of agriculture, and his father was arrested during the Stalin era purchase. In 1937, Yeltsin moved to the factory town of Berezniki, where his father, fresh out of Gulag prison camp, found worked as a laborer. Rebellious even as a youth, Yeltsin lost two fingers while playing with the hand grenade. He left Berezniki for Sverdlovsk, now it is Yekaterinburg, in 1949 to attend the Ural Polytechnic Institute. As a student there, he trained to become a civil engineer, played volleyball, and met his future wife, Naina Gijina, with whom he would have two daughters. Now, uh, besides that, upon graduation, Yeltsin worked as an overseer of the residential constructions projects. He also stepped into the political arena, becoming a Communist Party leader member in 1961. Now, this is where a kind of shift in the Yeltsin's life that can be seen. Joining the Sverdlovsk Provincial Party Committee 7 years later, after he served as a party chief, roughly equivalent to the governor position of the province from the 1976 to 1985. Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev summoned Yeltsin's to Moscow. Within a year, Yeltsin was pretty chief there and a non-voting member of the policy-making Politburo. He became well known for railing against corruption, going so far as fire hundreds of the lower level functionaries. He lost both of his posts in late 1987 and early 1988. However, after clashing with Gorbachev over the peace of reforms. Now let's understand how Boris Yeltsin came back and what was his role during the collapse of the Soviet Union. Having been exiled to a relatively obscure position in the construction of bureaucracy, Yeltsin began his political comeback in 1989 by winning election to a newly formed Soviet parliament with nearly, this is now the percentage is amazing, with nearly 90% of the vote. The following year, he won a similar landslide victory in a race for Russia's parliament, became its chair, and then he re-announced his membership in the Communist Party, which he had lost. We had seen he had lost it, now he had regained the membership of the Communist Party. With his momentum building, Yeltsin began calling for Gorbachev's resignation. He also submitted himself to elections for the Russian presidency, winning 59% of the vote in June 1991 compared to just 18% vote of for his closest competitor. So Yeltsin's stature rose even further in August 1991, which was, the famous incident is known as the August coup, when he climbed atop a tank to denounce a coup against his rival Gorbachev. The coup led by a conservative Soviet officials failed after 3 days. Immediately thereafter, Yeltsin set about dismantling the Communist Party and all 15 of the Soviet Union's republics moved to secure their independence. Gorbachev, who with his perestroika, that is political restructuring, and glasnost, that is openness, these were the two programs which were started to bring a kind of reforms within the Soviet economy, which had already started facing its problems from the decades of the 1980s, late 1980s. And these two programs, that is perestroika and glasnost, this program had hoped to change but not destroy the Soviet Union. These were the main objective, that there would be some reforms with these two there will be these reforms with these two programs. Those were led by the Mikhail Gorbachev. However, it didn't become successful, and finally it led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So 6 days later, Soviet Union officially dissolved, which was a very heartbreaking moment, which was a very power changing moment, not only for the domestic affairs of the Soviet Union but to the entire world, because the Cold War politics, the era of Cold War politics had been dominated by these two superpowers, one bloc led by the capitalist America and this another bloc that is led by the socialist USSR. So, unfortunately, on December 25, 1991, and 6 days afterwards, the Soviet Union officially dissolved, and it was replaced by a politically weak Commonwealth of Independent States that Yeltsin had established along with his counterparts in Ukraine and Belarus. Now, it is not something that it was resulted only into the creation of CIS. However, some of the states, some of the republics who had we do see differences when the Soviet Union collapsed, that we have already seen also, that some of the republics like Belarus and then Ukraine and the other republics, they remained with the Soviet Union. They remained, or they were very much similar uh, uh, into the administrative patterns and They were very similar with the kind of, the idea of the governance which the Soviet Union have had as a part of its uh, early power, early superpower. They continue to be a part of Soviet Union, or the when Russia considers, or when Russia declared as a successor of the Soviet Union, they some of the states remained with Russia, the new successor of the Soviet Union. Some states they joined the capitalist countries, like there were the Baltic states like Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. These states joined NATO. These states joined the European Union, and still there were some of the countries who would like to remain neutral. So this is how this former 15 newly emerged republic, they played, uh, they, according to their own national interest, they lean towards the superpowers. Some of them they remained with the uh, their earlier superpowers. So this was the situation of the uh, former Soviet republics. Now let's understand, when the USSR collapsed in 1991, the former 15 Soviet republics, they set out on a very new but very uncertain course, or the road, as independent states. It was initially very difficult for them to start with the new journey, because from long period they have been ruled, they have been with the one of the superpower, and now suddenly they have to look after for themselves on the global platform. So this was a very shocking moment for the all former Soviet republics. Russia, being the largest and the most powerful, inherited the USSR's place on the United Nations Security Council, and was seen as a successor of the Soviet states. However, independent Russia entered the 1990s in much weaker positions than the USSR was enjoying earlier as a superpower during the Cold War period, and faced several other economic and political chaos that would last through the decades. Unfortunately, the demise of the Soviet Union gave new freedoms to Russians and opened the country to the West, but the period is often remembered as a time of hardship that we shall always keep in mind. The Boris Yeltsin as a president, let's understand what kind of role, or what kind of power, and what kind of some initiatives that the